Hey everybody, it's Mary and Warren, and on today's video, we're going to provide beginner tips for photographing the Milky Way.
Absolutely, and we're getting ready this weekend to go out and photograph the Milky Way with our community of photographers here in Phoenix, Arizona. And we thought this would be the perfect time to tell you how we prepare and shoot the Milky Way.
Yeah, but before we get into the details of Milky Way shooting, we really want to emphasize the benefits of photographing the Milky Way, or really any night photography with a group. So number one is safety in numbers, especially in the desert at night. We hear all sorts of noises when we're sitting out there, wildlife, and you just really don't know who may come across you in the middle of the night. So for safety and number purposes, I just feel more comforted when I'm out in a group.
Yeah.
Another benefit is when you have that many, or even just a couple photographers together photographing the same subject, there's just going to be some sharing of knowledge. People are going to ask each other questions, give each other tips, and in turn, we also get the added benefit of being inspired by other photographers.
Yeah, that is a lot of fun to go out with a group.
Yeah.
So when we're preparing to go out for a shoot, we take a look at the Milky Way season. In the northern hemisphere, this typically runs from February to October. You want the darkest skies possible when you're shooting the Milky Way. So it's important to plan your shot around the new moon or an evening where the moon sets earlier than the Milky Way rises.
Yeah, when planning, there are many tools available to help you determine these moon phases and the Milky Way visibility. We prefer and use Photopills. There are other options such as Stellarium and Skywalk 2. But we do have a quick short video on how we use Photopills to prepare for our Milky Way, and we'll be sure to link it in the description below.
To start, however, look for a new moon night between February and October. The Milky Way will become visible in the southeast and set in the southwest. So you want to keep that in mind when you're looking for a location.
Yeah. So now let's talk about the gear. As far as required gear, a camera is a given. Both DSLR and mirrorless cameras are going to provide you with great results. And to be honest, there are phone cameras today that will allow you to capture the Milky Way as well. But we're talking bigger cameras today. And in order to get a sharp image, you're going to want to stabilize your camera due to the long shutter speeds required to photograph the Milky Way. So you're going to want to use a tripod. In addition, you're going to want a wide, fast lens. You want the wide lens, obviously, to capture as much of that beautiful night sky as possible, and a fast lens, meaning it allows you to open your aperture the widest possible to the lowest f-stop number. It's going to help you get as much light as possible in your lens. So on my camera right now, I use a Sigma 14-24 2.8 when shooting the Milky Way.
Yep, and I use on my Sony the Rokion 14mm 2.8 manual focus, but one of the new version has a focus lock ring. So when you set focus, you can lock it down and you can't tap it or bump it through the night. So I kind of like that feature. It's turned out to be a pretty good lens, but it is manual focus.
Yeah, and we'll be sure to link both of these lenses down below. They're great lenses for beginners.
Absolutely. Now that we know the required gear, let's take a look at some recommended gear. The first one being a remote shutter release. This helps you minimize camera shake while pressing the shutter button on the camera. It is especially helpful when you're using bulb mode because you can lock the shutter button down, and this can be for longer exposures than 30 seconds, which your camera will do automatically. Another piece of gear that we'd like to talk about is a star tracker. A star tracker allows you to counteract the Earth's movement while keeping your shutter open for a long exposure. Typically, if you are at longer exposures without a star tracker, you'll start to see trails on the stars due to the Earth's movement. A star tracker moves your camera with the stars as the Earth rotates. When you use a longer shutter speed, you can reduce your ISO and ultimately reduce the noise that higher ISOs produce. The last piece of recommended gear that we're going to take a look at is called light pollution filter. This is a filter that helps you reduce the yellow and green colors caused by city lights.
All right, let's talk camera settings now. I'm going to provide some recommended settings to get you started. However, we cannot provide you with exact settings because each situation is going to be different. So we're going to give you a starting point and then you can adjust based on your given situation. So first things first is you're going to want to put your camera in manual mode. That is the M on your dial. You're also going to put your lens or focusing on manual as well. So on my lens, it's off here on the side. There's a little switch that will put it on manual. We also recommend shooting in RAW to allow more flexibility in editing, allowing for the best possible final image. Now, if you're really new to photography and you don't feel comfortable shooting in RAW or really don't even know what RAW is, look through your camera's menu option for a JPEG plus RAW setting and shoot that way. This will allow you to shoot in your comfort zone of the JPEG, but you'll have that RAW image available as you learn and as you start to play and edit with your images.
So now let's start with your widest aperture available, which may be 2.8 or lower depending on the lens that you're using. If your lens doesn't go that wide, it's okay. You'll just need to adjust your ISO, which will most likely give you a little bit more noise, but it will give you a good exposure. Next, you'll want to choose a high ISO, starting somewhere between 16 and 3200. Again, the wider your aperture, the lower you can start with your ISO.
So now that we've got our aperture and our ISO set, we're going to go ahead and set our shutter speed. You're going to want to start around 15 seconds. The wider your lens, the longer you can keep the shutter open without showing star movement. So for example, if I'm shooting at 14 millimeters with this lens, I could potentially decrease that shutter speed to 20 to 30 seconds and not have star movement. However, if I go to the 24 millimeter side of this lens or have a wider, a more zoomed in lens like 70 millimeters, you're going to want to stay closer to that 15 seconds to avoid star movement or star trails. If that time is not allowing enough light in to make a bright image, what you're going to do is increase your ISO until you achieve the results you desire. So really to summarize, you're going to set your f-stop to the lowest possible number. You're going to set your ISO to a mid to high range, and then you're going to choose a long shutter speed somewhere between 15 to 30 seconds.
Yeah, it's a good starting point. All right, let's talk about setting focus. This may be one of the more challenging parts of Milky Way photography. One option is to set your camera while they're in the daylight. Focus as far out into the distance as you can and then leave it there on your tripod until the Milky Way rises. Some will set it to infinity and then back it off just a little bit and cross your fingers and hopefully you've got the stars in focus. We achieve the best focus by zooming in as much as we can on the LCD and then focus on the brightest star. When that star becomes the smallest in shape, you know that you're in focus. Sony also will let you use a manual focus assist option that will put a red edge around the objects that are in focus. So now you're ready to take some test shots and adjust as needed.
And some additional tips that we have for you. The first one is using an intervalometer. So as Warren mentioned earlier, this gives you a shutter release option that keeps your fingers off your camera to avoid shake. But in addition, what it allows you to do is choose the number of shots that you want to take and the interval in between those shots. This will allow your camera to be continuously shooting, providing plenty of options for choosing your favorite frame. And this provides the possibility of combining the images to create a time lapse.
Yeah, I love doing that.
I know, and you do such a great job at it.
Thank you. Another tip we have is to take an image of the foreground before it's completely dark outside. And if you want to stack it with your favorite sky picture, you'll create a more dynamic image.
And another way to have fun with it is to play with your white balance. So as I mentioned earlier, we recommend shooting in RAW, and you can adjust your white balance after the fact. However, it's fun in the moment to see how that white balance affects your image. I like to play with the tungsten or incandescent setting as it gives a cooler image, more blue, but some of the warmer settings give you like an orange and purple, so it's just fun to play with.
It is fun. We hope these tips give all you beginner photographers a good starting point to get out there and practice. If you're in the Arizona area and looking for a group to photograph with, we would love to have you join us here in Phoenix, Arizona.
Yeah, so please keep an eye out on our Facebook at Exploretography or our meetup and see what our next events are. If you have any other questions, please drop them below in the comments. And if you're an advanced photographer who thinks we've missed some good tips and you want to share, we would love to have you comment them below too.
We would love for you to join our community and appreciate it if you would like, share, and subscribe if you're not already subscribed to our channels so you can be notified in the future of photo tips and adventures that we take.
Yeah, and until next time, remember to get out there and explore,
Create,
and do good.
Bye, guys.